guys, welcome back to another video. I'm down here in sunny Aylesbury at Swift Performance with my M2 competition. Today we start stage 3 of the M2 Club Sport build. Hopefully you've seen the first couple of stages on my channel. If you've missed them, there's a link to both those videos in the description below. Just running over quickly some of the main highlights that we've already done to this car. Well, we've replaced pretty much all of the suspension, the arms, the shock absorbers themselves with some lovely Bilstein Club Sport units. We replaced a lot of the braking system. Most recently, we replaced the standard interior and seats with 2 Recaro buckets. There's also a half cage in there, and bolted to that cage is some lovely 6-point harnesses. I've also got a spacer on the steering wheel, which brings the wheel closer to me now in my new low driving position, and a PS design shifter. We've made some lightweight improvements as well, aside from just ripping out a lot of the interior, like the rear bench, etc. We've also got a Deadweight Industries battery in the boot, which saves 17 kilos on its own, and you lose no performance of that. This car's been sitting around for 2 weeks. I started it the other day and had absolutely no issues with that. But for the next part of the build, today and tomorrow, we're going to be sticking on some products from Auto ID that are going to help with aero and help the car look cosmetically better. Kyle from Define Coding is also coming down to work some of his magic. I'm not going to ruin it because we'll talk about everything at the end once it's been done. And we're also going to iron out and fix a couple of the issues that we've had so far in the build. So some of the suspension secret arms around the back end, they have some movement in the rose joints. So Matt has sent out some replacements of them. So hopefully that will get rid of that movement and get rid of that rattle and noise. So I'll join you in a couple of days' time once everything's been done, and we'll go through what has been done. And then next week I'm taking it to Goodwood on one of Evo Magazine's track days. So I'll get to actually try it out properly and see what my new M2 Club Sport feels like out on a circuit like Goodwood. Join me 2 days later and the car is now complete. Let's go through what has been done over the past 48 hours. Firstly, Russ had modified and installed some seatbelt mounts, which allows me to use my normal 3-point seatbelts in the M2. So when I'm on the road, I don't have to use the 6-point harness, because obviously that gets uncomfortable and it gets a little bit tiring. We then turned our attention to the rear suspension setup. Now, obviously I had the suspension and brakes done on this car in stage 1, but during stage 2's video, I talked about the rear suspension setup having a little bit of movement and noise, a rattle almost, and that was the original rose joints that Matt from Suspension Secret supplied us, had a tiny bit of movement. You couldn't notice it when they're off, but when you put them on the car and obviously took it out on the road, you could feel it, or you could hear it at least. So Matt sent down a new batch of rose joints and Russ installed them. Took hours and hours, but we put them on, and the good news is there's no more movement there. We've also installed some extra arms. I think they were traction arms. So now we have literally the full suite of Suspension Secret arms on there, which makes the rear end very adjustable, which is obviously a bit of a headache when you're setting the car up for alignment, but it gives you all of that adjustability, which is amazing. After that, we fitted some solid mounts for the suspension arms where they mount onto the rear subframe from Milway. And I have to say a massive shout out and thanks to my good friend and fellow YouTuber, Tim Williams, who literally spent the entire day going down to Brighton and back. I'm not exaggerating, probably 5 or 6 hours of his own time to pick them up and get them to us fairly last minute, which is just amazing. So massive shout out to Tim. After that, we set to work installing this front splitter by Auto ID. So this is their new M2 competition GTS style splitter. So it's going to add a little bit of aero, but most importantly to me is it's not too long, doesn't sit too low, because my car doesn't sit ridiculously low, because remember, this is a club sport build. I want it to work on the road, the UK roads, and I want it to work on track. And whilst we were fitting that front splitter, we also installed some Zun Sports radiator guards, I guess you'd call them. In fact, I installed them because they're really easy to install. I think it's about the only thing that I did on my own with this car, but they're looking lovely. I've seen them on a few cars out at track days and stuff, and hopefully they will protect especially my lower radiators, because all it takes is one pebble or stone on a track day to fire through there and hit one of those rads, and your day's over, not to mention the costs of getting the car recovered and replacing the radiators, etc. So they're a very, very good addition to this car, and I love the way the front end of this car looks now. It's so much more aggressive with the splitter. I've never really got that excited by splitters, but now I've got one on my M3 and I've got one on my M2, so maybe I'm changing my mind slightly, but there's no doubting that, yeah, the extra airflow into the radiators with this and a tiny bit of added extra downforce makes sense on something that I will be using a lot on track. Other bits, well, Michelin very kindly sent me out some fresh rubber. The fronts are good enough for another couple of track days because I replaced them fairly recently. The rears had done either 4 or 5 track days. They still were legal and had enough tread, but I think because I've had them on this car for about 18 months and it was in storage for many of those months, I think the compound slightly went off. So we put some fresh boots on the rear, and as I say, the front ones are only a couple of months old anyway, so that should be a nice addition, give us a bit of added extra grip to the car. And then last but most definitely not least, Kyle from Define Coding popped down yesterday and spent a good couple of hours coding some very interesting stuff into my M2 competition. So let's rewind to yesterday and I'll let him explain what he's done exactly to my M2 competition.
Hello guys, we're down at Swift Performance today and we're working on Joe Achilles' lovely M2 competition. I'm Kyle, I'm the owner of Define Coding. You guys have probably seen us about with various companies and other content creators. And today we've had the lovely opportunity of revisiting this vehicle. We previously helped code some features on this car as it had a set of Recaro seats fitted with the roll cage. So we did some coding to make sure none of the errors pop up and the seat belts are coded in correctly.
Firstly, thanks a lot for coming down. And it's been awesome meeting you in person because we've talked a lot on socials. Definitely. I've heard lots about you, mostly good. Let's talk about what you've done with the M2, the change you've done and other things you can do to it. But I think we've pretty much done most of the stuff you can code in.
Yeah, so you've had the full suite of coding now. We've done the CS conversion, which changes the differential, the steering and the traction control settings. So these basically change the characteristics from the competition into the CS cars. You get, you know, the M3, the M4 and the M2 CS. So they are now like for like. We've done some convenience coding, you know, full screen Apple CarPlay, Android Mirrorcast. We've done the one-touch mirrors and just some bits to help you live with the car and make it a bit better day to day.
Sure.
The performance flashes obviously changed the car completely in terms of feel on track, which you know, traction control and introduction of stuff like that. And we might have done a DME unlock and maybe potential a CS DME flash. So, you know, on your next track day, I'm sure you'll get to experience what that feels like.
Yes, yeah, no, I'm excited about that because I think the M2 comp, it's always lacked that little bit of power that we know the S55's got.
Yep.
We know that they do, or they did an M2 CS, which is the same engine, the same cooling systems, the same gearbox, same everything. So we know that it's safe to upgrade to 450, 460. So I've got that. And even, down to the diff settings and the steering settings, obviously with the CS iteration of whether it's the M2 or the M3 and the M4, those cars are always, they've fine-tuned everything in the car's lifetime, haven't they? And then the CS is always, it has been recently anyway, the pinnacle. It's like, that's the best model. They've got everything right with it that was wrong during its life cycle. In terms of people that want to reach you, obviously if they come down to Swift, you can work through with these guys. But you also do, obviously you do call outs, would you call it?
Yeah,
or?
we do some remote jobs. So obviously, we do a call out visit where we can come to you and do the work for you on site in person.
Yep.
We do remote, obviously, as long as you've got access to a Windows laptop anywhere in the world. You know, we work across the globe, Dubai, Kuwait, Australia.
You've got clients in Australia.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so we work quite closely with a lot of other companies as well. So yeah, you can come down to Swift and have us enable this for you. If you've got an M2 conversion is definitely the way to go to get the CS flashes done.
Sure. Yeah. In fact, today you've worked on. There's been about 3 or 4
Three
customers
of them,
of theirs. Yeah. So I'm glad it wasn't just down here for me, because you spent a long time down here. Been very patient with my filming and stuff. All of the information for Kyle and Define Coding will be down in the description below. So make sure you check him out and follow him on Instagram and check out what he's been up to of late. Cheers, buddy.
Appreciate it so much.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming down, and I'll see you again very soon, I'm sure. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that explanation from Kyle. Massive thanks, Kyle. Massive thanks to Russ and Tim at Swift Performance. As always, these guys have been amazing, and they deal with me hovering around for days on end, filming, etc., and asking them so many things, because I'm not massively technically minded, and I've learnt so much during this build process. It's really, really exciting to me. And last big thanks goes to, obviously, Tim Williams for running all the way down to Brighton to pick up those Millway mounts. We're going to fast forward to next week when I'm at the Evo track day at Goodwood. It's one of their last track days. So I will see you there on track and talk you through what this stage 3 M2 competition feels like. It's the afternoon. I've been flying around here all day long in the glorious M2 and absolutely loving it. Before we talk about what the car's like around here, what the seats are like and the cage is like, I just want to say a big shout out and mention to Adrian Flux Car Insurance. As you know, they insure my M2, this car, and the M3 on the road. And in fact, most importantly now and relevant is they insure this M2 in its current state, so modified on the road, and they're insuring me today around the track. So big shout out to those guys. Massive thanks. Obviously, track days are not cheap, and yeah, I'm able to do a fair few of them every year because Adrian Flux help. And while we're on that subject, well, this is an Evo magazine track day. I did run with them at Goodwood a couple of months ago, and they're just fantastic. The machinery that's here today, unreal. The people that are here, awesome. So many people have obviously read the articles in Evo about this car already, which is just mega. Yeah, anyway, let's get on to talking about what this car's like. Well, at first, it took me a while to get used to it because obviously, as I've banged on about, I'm sitting a lot lower and I'm much more connected to the chassis of this car. cheeky little flyby for my good friend Patrick, ex-Talk Chasers Patrick, who used to do the Petrolhead tours with me. He's popped down. Absolute legend, love that guy. Cheers, Patrick. So, back to the car. So I'm feeling everything. I'm feeling a lot more what's going on beneath me. And at first, it was a little bit eerie around here. As you've probably just seen then, I'm having to counter steer on the brakes. There's something that's not quite right setup wise. And I felt that immediately this morning on my first sort of outlap almost. Now I'm used to it and I know it's there. I'm kind of driving around it, but I'm not able to drive flat out because it's definitely not quite right. There's something, feels like one of the rear wheels is towing in and out under acceleration and under hard braking. So, and Goodwood is about the last place you want that to happen. So you probably can tell I'm focusing a lot more than I normally would be as well. But aside from that slight issue, which I'm sure Russ will be able to fix once he's had a good look under it, the car feels mega. It just, I've got to keep telling myself to stop supporting my body weight on the steering wheel and with my left leg, because I'm in a harness and that is supporting me, you know. I can relax on the steering wheel. Yeah. funny counter steering going in there. I can relax on the wheel. At least I could if the car was tracking perfectly right, but it's just not quite right. Probably not picking it up on camera, but I've also got to remember that this car's a lot faster now. Although I'm on the same rubber and the same suspension, we've lost over 50 kilos in weight and gained almost 50 horsepower. I'm in the CS map. And a lot more torque as well. It's just crazy. Well, maximum focus. It feels like a completely new car to me. Very, very different in every aspect. Aside from the fact that it's behaving slightly odd, and I think something needs to be done. It's weird because Russ did a full GL on the car, it looked perfect, but there's something that's not quite right. I suspect it's on the rear axle somewhere. We put in some new traction arms. But yeah, it's definitely moving around a lot more than it should be. But that said, and that aside, it's just epic. I feel just perfect down here, position-wise. I really do. I feel so connected to the car and the chassis, so those movements in the braking zones are accentuated, because whereas before I'd be like propping myself up with the wheel and using my left leg to hold myself in place, etc. Now I'm just sitting here, I'm feeling what's going on beneath me, and yeah, it's really interesting to feel exactly what's going on. I can feel the rear wheels, I can feel exactly what they're doing, I can feel the front axle, I can feel everything. I'm just more connected to the car. Feels great. My confidence isn't fully there because there's been a lot of changes, and the car is substantially quicker. I mean, saving 52 kilos or whatever it is, plus lowering the center of gravity, plus adding an extra 40 horsepower and 50 newton meters of torque, does make this car, its power to weight ratio, a lot bigger, a lot higher. God knows how much by, but it's substantial. So the car is noticeably quicker everywhere. and when you factor in my new driving position and not being as familiar, it's just a lot to take in. But anyway, what a car. Can't wait to get everything sorted and ironed out for Bedford next week actually. There's my main man Patrick on the camera. Can't wait to get everything sorted for Bedford and give it a good push around Bedford, because for Bedford there's a lot of runoff. Here you can't take too many liberties because, well, there's just no runoff. You don't want to take those liberties. So wow, what a day. What a car, what a track. Massive thanks to Russ and Swift Performance, as always, absolute legends. You'll find all their details in the description below. Huge thanks to Adrian Flux Car Insurance and Evo Track Days. Again, you'll find the link to Adrian Flux Car Insurance always in the description of my video, and you'll find anything to do with Evo and their track days also in the description below. Until the next video, I will see you then. Cheers. Right, so here he is, Mr. Tim Williams. This is the legend that I was talking about earlier on in the video, and these are the parts that he went all the way down to Brighton to collect. Mate, firstly, just tell us a little bit about you and your channel.
Yeah, so I'm Tim Williams. I'm the Poundland version of Joe Achilles. So I try my best to put out BMW content, other brands content. Yeah, I've got an M240i that I'm building for Time Attack. I did have an M2, but I decided to go back to the V58 because we all know it's a better engine. But yeah, Tim Williams on Instagram, Tim Williams on YouTube. That's about it.
Yeah, make sure, honestly guys, I don't do this very often on my channel, but make sure you do check out his YouTube channel, his moped that someone else is riding behind me in the background, and his
it's a drone,
and his Instagram account. I can't thank you enough for picking up those Milway parts earlier on, man.
No worries.
Would have been absolutely stuck. And I mean, honestly, Russ was pulling his hair out over it, so
pulled out a lot.
Oh, Russ! Oh, mate, I'm so sorry about that.
Pulling. The pulling is finished.
Take it easy, mate.
Cool, man. No worries.
Easy now.
Easy now.
Oh my God, Joe.
Yeah.
It's so much faster. Oh my God. Oh, your brakes are good. Oh my God, your brakes are good. Yeah, because obviously you've got... Oh, wow. It's terrifying.
What's that reflection up there? It's really... Can we get rid of it? Oh, sorry.